Hi everyone, am I audible? Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll wait for 5 minutes and we'll see whether others are joining because half of the people have joined the YouTube. And yes, let's wait for a while and then we'll continue. Okay. I hope everyone have received your short notes, mind maps, question tute, as well as the unit-wise past paper as well. I guess everyone have received. If you haven't received, you all can scan this QR code and get into the WhatsApp channel to download your all the tunes. Okay. Okay, so we will be starting by exactly by 6:40. Okay. So those who have requested to get the short notes and all, I will accept your request after the classes. Okay. Yeah, I received so many requests to download the short notes, question tunes, and all the stuffs. So the people who have already requested previously before the class start, I have already accepted. The people who are requesting right now, uh, yeah. So right now I will be accepting your request after the classes, right? All right. Yes, Mariam, after a very long time. Right. We'll start within 2 minutes. Hold on. And we will have a good interactive session, as well as at the end of the session we will be having a small quiz session. So yeah, so we will be rewarding the winners also, so I hope you all will be staying until the end of the session. Okay, so good evening to everyone. I hope I am audible to you, and this is Hamrat here. So, just a small introduction regarding myself for the new people over here. So, I have 5 years experience in teaching science, as well as I am a medical student, and I am working for my MBBS, as well as I want to become a gynecologist. So, most probably, teaching is one of my passion, while learning medical and becoming a doctor is my goals. So mostly, I'm a passionate person regarding science, or it can be any other subjects. So mostly, I wanted to give 100% to my students. It can be online or physical. So I hope you all will be receiving 100% throughout this session, and will do it better, right? So I hope I'm not gonna disappoint anyone, and I hope everyone have received the short notes and all the stuffs. In case if you don't receive, or if you haven't received, I will send you my number at the end of the session, so you can get the tunes directly without downloading. So yeah, I can arrange that for you all. Right. So let's get started. And today we are going to study about the first chapter of your grade 10, which you call it as the chemical basis of life. So, when you talk about the chemical basis of life, this is probably regarding biology. So, we are studying about biology, which means we need to study about the life lessons. Most probably, we have to study about the life lessons. So, now what you need to understand over here is when we talk about the chemical, what are we studying? We are studying about chemical that is present within the life, and how it is formed, and what are they, and what are the functions are performed by the chemicals that is present in our life, right? So first of all, when you talk about life, now always in science, when we talk about life, what is the main three types of life we need to study about? Now whenever we say the word life, we need to understand that life, we in another term we call in science as organism, which means the living things, we call it as what? Organism. So when you talk about organism, what do you need to understand? Organism, we call it as life, which means we call it as what? The living things. So the living things around us, we call it as what? Organism, or we call it as life. So we need to understand how the chemicals are present inside the organism, is performing with the functions and all of them. So, what are the three types of organisms we need, and we studied already in grade 6? One, we studied about animals. Other one, we studied about plants. And then we studied about microorganisms in grade 8, 9, and also grade 7, 6, and everything you studied about all about microorganism. In grade 10 and 11, you are going to focus on animals and plants in detail, right? So first, we need to understand how these animals, plants, microorganism, all of them are made up of. Now, let's say, for example, you have a house. Now, say this is the house. Now, if I take a house or an apartment or whatever, let's say this is a duster, let's say this is a marker. Now, if you think how all of these are made up of, now, if you take a pen and a paper and if you start noting it down, you say the house is made up of brick. Now, if I ask a question furthermore, how this brick is made up of, you say it is made up of clay and water. It is made up of clay and water. So now, when you talk about a thing, which means now whenever we talk about thing, we call it as matter. We call it as matter. So what do you mean by matter? Matter means what? Which has a mass and it occupies space. We call it as matter. So whenever we talk about matter, a matter will always made up of something, which means now if you talk about house, a house is made up of what? Brick. Now if it is made up of brick, now how the brick is made up of? Water and clay, right? So which means now when you talk about animals, plants, and microorganisms, all of the matter, all of the living things surrounding the world, that is made up of a simple form, that you call it as what? Atom. So when you talk about atom, atom is the simplest form of a substance that all the creatures are made up of, which means now if you say animals, plants, and microorganisms, all of them are made up of cells. Now if you understand, if the cell, how is the cell is made up of? Cell is made up of atom. So all the things surrounding the world, that is made up of what? Atom. So first of all, before we go to this lesson, we need to understand certain scientific terms in order to understand the lesson clearly. The first word that we are learning today is about what? Atom. So what do you mean by atom? Atom is the simplest form of a matter or simplest form of a substance. That you call it as what? What do you call that as? You call that as atom. So now when you talk about atom, this atom is introduced by a scientist. We call that person as John Dalton. Now we don't want to learn further details about atom, because if I talk about more about atom, it will become a chemistry lesson. Now as we are studying about biology, let's move with the biology part. Now what is happening, you need to understand clearly and simply. Now I want to talk about the biology lesson now. If I'm talking about biology lesson, let me take it into the biology part. Now, what happens? We know animals, plants, microorganisms, all of them are made up of atom. That means, now how did the cell is made up of? Now, you should get a question. How is the cell is made up of? Now, we say animals, plants, microorganisms are made up of cell. And if I talk about cell, cell is made up of atom. So, that means what is the formation of atom? If an atom, that means one atom and another atom combined together, we call them as molecule. We call them as what? Molecule. If one atom and another atom, that means if similar atom or it can be a dissimilar atom. Let's say for example, you got a chain. Now let's take a bead chain. Now if I take a bead chain, now say you have a circular bead, you have a triangular bead, let's say you have a square shaped bead, let's say something like that. And again you have a circle, triangle, and then you have certain things. Now imagine, now when you talk about this circle plus circle, now when I take this, let's say this is an atom and let's say this is also an atom. When two similar atoms combine together, we call them as molecules. That means combination of similar atoms, we call it as what? Molecules. Because they are similar, I can give them a good name, that you call it as homoatomic molecule. Homoatomic
atomic molecule. In another term, in chemistry, homoatomic molecule, I can call it as elements. I can call it as what? Elements. So homoatomic molecule also can be called the similar atoms together, or we can call them as elements. So now what do you need to understand? We know, or give me a second. So now what you need to understand is, now when you have atoms, now imagine you have so many atoms in the nature. These atoms perform a role and they create something called molecule. That means combination of similar atoms, we call it as molecules in common terms. But if I want to specify it more similar, which you call it as what? Homoatomic molecule. If you don't know what is homoatomic molecule, there is another name to call these homoatomic molecules as elements. So elements means what? Combination of similar atoms combined together or similar molecules combined together, that you call it as what? Elements. Now imagine you have a circle and you got a triangle. Now circle and triangle, now circle is also an atom, triangle is also an atom, but these two atoms are two different people. That means, are they similar or dissimilar? They are dissimilar. So when you have a dissimilar atoms combined together, but atoms and atoms are same, right? Which you call in common as what? We call it as molecules. So molecules you call in common when dissimilar atoms combine together. If I want to specify more, if dissimilar atoms are combining together, we call it as heteroatomic molecule. We call it as what? Heteroatomic molecule. So combination of different atoms or dissimilar atoms, in specifically if I want to say, we call these as heteroatomic molecules. We call these as what? Heteroatomic molecules. In order to that, if you don't know what is heteroatomic molecules, in another term, we call them as compound. For example, if I take oxygen is a homoatomic molecule. Why do we say they are homoatomic molecule? What is the reason? Because oxygen doesn't present as a O1 in the nature. That means they do not exist as an atom in the nature. They always present as a homoatomic molecule, or we call them as diatomic diatomic gas. We call them as what? Diatomic gas. That means if they wanted to exist as a, now if they wanted to exist in the nature, they will not present as an atom, they will always present as a molecule. That means combination of two atoms, oxygen 1 combined together, they have formed O2 in order to form O2 molecule. So that means oxygen can be called as an element. Also, it can be called as a homoatomic molecule. Also, it can be called as a molecule. Did you understand? Clear with that? So, molecule is a common term. How can we write the common term? Combination of similar or dissimilar. Combination of similar or dissimilar atoms, we call them as what? Molecules. If I want to specify, if similar atoms combine together, we call them as homo. Dissimilar atoms combine together, we call it as what? Hetero. In order to that, we even can call them as compound. Even here, we can call them as element. Example here, water. If I take the example as water, how many elements or how many molecules can you see here? I can see two different molecules. That means I can see H2 as well as I can see O2. That means hydrogen is one kind of a molecule. Oxygen is another kind of molecule. Even I told you that molecules, they are homoatomic molecules. If they are homoatomic molecules, now see, hydrogen two times, hydrogen 1 and hydrogen 1 combined together, they became H2, which means H2 is going to be a molecule. What kind of molecule? Homoatomic molecules, similar atoms combined together, which means I can even call them as elements. So, did you understand the word what is an element and compound? So, let's come back again and let's understand. So, when you talk about chemical basis of life, first of all, we need to understand how are the life on the earth is created. So, first, we know what happened. So, all the organisms in the nature, all the organisms in the nature is made up of what? They are made up of cell. So before that, we should know the cell is made up of what? The cell is made up of atom. If the atoms and atoms combine together, they form molecules. So if these molecules and molecules combine together, they form macromolecules. If the macromolecules and macromolecules combine together, they form organelles and then they form the cell. So that means you need to understand each and everything on the earth is made up of atom. If two similar atoms combine together, if I say two similar atoms combine together, we call them as homoatomic molecule or we call them as elements. Remember, in exam, they never ask you the definition of atom or they do not ask the definition of elements or compounds. It is your job to understand the definition or if it is your job to write the definition for this words. Clear with that? Understood that? So, if two dissimilar atoms combine together, we call them as heteroatomic molecules or we can call them as compound. So, did you understand the word for the compound? Did you understand the word for the elements? So, mainly in this lesson, we will be using the word elements and compounds. Clear? Understood? So, this is going to be the introduction for this lesson. Got the idea? Understood? Right. Now let's go to the lesson. Now listen to me carefully. Before you don't want to write anything because already in the short note I have given all the definitions. So if you just want to listen the lesson and if you are just free, no need of writing anything. If you just listen, that's all enough. Right. Now listen to me carefully. Now what you need to understand is now when you take now this syllabus, now when you talk about this science book syllabus is from 2016. So that means in those days they have discovered only very few things. That means they said that in the nature there are about 92 elements. That means now in your periodic table there are 118 elements are there. More than that they have discovered. But in those times, they said that there are 92 elements in the nature. Now, out of these 92 elements, how many percent is inside your body? They said 25. That means less than 25% is present inside your body. That means out of 92, 25 elements are present inside your body. That means imagine, say this is your body. Inside your body, little amount of elements are present. That means not in high amount, all in moderate and little amounts, like very small amount, like percentage, small percentage. So that much of elements are present inside your body. So how many elements are there inside in the nature? We have how many? Yes, 92 elements are in the nature. Out of 92, 25 is present inside your body. Now, out of this 25, there will be high amount of elements. That means mostly found inside your body. The main elements which are mostly found inside your body is out of 25 is 4. How many? 4 elements. So, what are those 4 elements? We can directly remember. We remember as John, which means carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. If I ask you a question, you should answer me. Which element you can't live without? Out of these 4, which element you can't live without? Out of these 4, very good. You can't live without oxygen. So when you talk about these 4 elements, you can't live without this oxygen. So we say the most abundant element inside your body. Now most of the time in your MCQ they test that. They ask the question in MCQ, which of the following is the most abundant element. Now, if they say the word element means, are they talking about one element or more than one element? One element. Which is the most abundant element inside your body? That's going to be oxygen. In case if they say elements means, are they talking only about oxygen or are they talking about all four people? They're talking about all four people. Did you understand? Clear with that? Got the idea? Got the idea? Understood? Got the idea, right? Right. Now look here. Now look here. Now what did we understand? We know all of us are made up of atoms, and combination of two atoms we form molecules. Combination of similar atoms we form homoatomic molecules, which we call it as elements. Combination of similar atoms or molecules we call them, that means combination of similar atoms, or we can say dissimilar atoms, they form what? Heteroatomic molecules. Example, we call it as compounds. Now, when you talk about elements, imagine now I told you that water. When you talk about water, water can be called as a molecule. Oxygen also called as a molecule, which means I can call, instead of molecule, I can call this water as an element. This oxygen also I can call as an element. Now, is hydrogen and oxygen, are they both same? No, they are different. So when different elements combine together, we can call them as compounds. So compounds, I can call it as what? Heteroatomic molecule, or I can call it as what? Compounds. So compounds can be called as heteroatomic molecule. Clear with that? So combination of two different elements, you form compounds. Now you are going to study more in detail about compounds. Now listen to me. I'm going to tell you like a story so you would understand the compound lesson easier. Now when you talk about compounds, imagine I'm going to tell you what is there in your textbook in detail. Now imagine, now in your book they have spoke about compounds. There are two types of compounds, it's it. One, you call it as organic compound. Other one, they call it as inorganic compound, right? So now when you talk about, no, the most abundant element on, I mean in the atmosphere, I was talking about the most abundant element inside your body is oxygen. In the atmosphere, it's gonna be nitrogen most of the time. Inside your body is different, outside the body is different. Outside the body is atmosphere. Inside the body, we are going to talk about the oxygen. Oxygen is the most abundant. Without oxygen, you cannot live. So, right. Now, what you need to understand, so you need to talk about, there are two types of compounds. Now, let me tell you a story. Now, imagine compound is going to be the father. Now, imagine compound is going to be the father. Now, this father got two sons. Imagine these two sons are going to be the twin. They are going to be the twin. Okay, no, just think like they are son. Okay, so now what is going to happen is, this father is a rich man. This father is a rich man. So this father is saying that organic, he's saying organic. Now let me tell about the organic character. Let me talk about the inorganic character. Organic is a very intelligent guy. He used to think by himself. He started to do things by himself. But inorganic is a very lazy person. He doesn't think by himself. He always copy his brother. So this is the case. Now what happened? Compound is saying, father is saying that, okay son, today I'm going to check both of your intelligence. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to provide your money. So what he's going to do? Now they are rich, no? So they are going to check with the money. So what is it going to do is, compound is saying that, father is saying, organic, I'll give you 1 lakh. Just I'm going to take a small amount, and say inorganic also going to get the same amount of 1 lakh. Now what is going to happen is, father is saying that, now if both of the son, if the both of the son is gonna, now what is it going to do? The both of the son should prove whether they got intelligence. That means father is saying that, if you can double the amount of this 1 lakh, I can accept you as my son. Like that, the father is going to give a challenge. Now what is happening? Organic is thinking what I can do with this 1 lakh. How can I make it double? Now what did the organic do? Organic started up a theater. He opened up a theater. Theater means he opened up a like a business theater, like what is it? film theater. So now what happened is Organic started up a theater. He invested the whole 1 lakh. He invested the whole 1 lakh and he made a good. Now just imagine with 1 lakh you can't do a theater, but just to make sure to understand the concept easier, I just took it as a 1 lakh. Now imagine what is happening is, now when you talk about 1 lakh, now what is happening? He invested the whole amount. He started making a good air conditioned and good with the, what do you say, the ambience are so good and everything. He made a good one. So this is like a luxury theater. Now Inorganic was like, okay, let's copy my brother's idea, but my father told to make it double. Now what happened? What did he say? Investing 1 lakh is not gonna be worth. Let's use it for 50,000. So if we use 50,000, the 50,000 will be there. Now whatever the income there, I can make it double. He thought like that. Now with that 50,000, can he make a luxury theater? No, right? He can't make a luxury theater. He just made a normal theater with some plastic chairs and normal ceiling fans and all. Now imagine, if you are a person to go to the theater, would you like to go to the luxury theater or would you like to go to the normal theater? You would always go to the luxury theater where there is comfortable, isn't it? Now that is what the all the people will like to go. Now Organic is person who is very strict at money and everything because he wants to make sure that he has to bring up the promise that was given by the father. So now what happened? So what happened is, one day there was a set of people. There was a set of people who came to the theater. Now imagine like a twin people. Now we need to understand the word for twin. Twin means what? They will have the same names. Like for example, if we say like if I say about the names will be similar pronouncing, right? So we say Nafis and Mufis. Like we say the names are like similarly pronouncing one. So what happens is there will be four twins entering into the luxury theater. Now imagine, now this person is very strict at getting the money. No, imagine the money that is taken by the Organic is going to be the carbon, which means now when I talk about carbon, carbon is the money that is accepted by Organic. But Inorganic is a person who doesn't even think about money. He is allowing everyone for free. That means, is he receiving the carbon from everyone? Is he receiving money from everyone? He's not receiving. So which means, now what is happening? Now these four children are coming. Now what are their name? Carbon dioxide. Now carbon dioxide is the one set of style. So carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Look at the name. Carbon, carbon, side, side. All like a name similar, no? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. Other one? Carbonate. Carbonate. Another one is bicarbonate. Now, if you take the names, look here, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide looks like a twin name. Carbonate, bicarbonate looks like a twin name. So, this like a twin name. Now, when you talk about this, looks like a twin name. So, when you look into this, now these four people are very rich family, but one day they lost their wallet. They have lost. Now, once they have lost the wallet, now this Organic is a rich person. These children's father also rich people, but they know each other. But this Organic is very strict in getting the money. So these people were convincing the Organic to go into the theater for free. But what did the Organic say? Organic say, no, you can't come to the theater. You have to go out. So these people were trying to get into the theater without giving money. Then they got caught. And finally he told, Organic told that these people should not enter to the theater. So he put a board like, except these people, others can enter to the theater. So that means what I'm trying to tell is, you need to understand the definition in detail. That means you don't need to by heart the definition. So what is the definition for organic compound? Organic compound is the compound which contain carbon except carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbonate, and bicarbonate. Now, what is the definition for inorganic compound? Inorganic compound is a compound which do not contain carbon. So that's the definition for organic compound and inorganic compound. Did you understand? Got the idea? Did you understand? Clear with that? Okay, right. Now listen. Now what you need to understand is, when you talk about a definition should be understood directly. That means without by hearting, but just by examples you need to understand. So when it comes to your monthly test, now see, Now, maybe not in your O levels, maybe not in your term paper, but in your monthly test, in your unit test, they can ask you to write the definition of organic compound, inorganic compound. So, how are you going to write? Organic compounds are compounds which contain carbon, except, the word except is very important, except carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbonate, and bicarbonate. Except these people, rest of them contains carbon. Next one, inorganic compounds are compounds which do not contain carbon. Clear with that? Right. Now, when you look into this situation, who will become rich person? Is the organic will become a rich person or inorganic will become a rich person? Who will become a rich person? Yes, Sarah. Who will become a rich person? Organic compound will become a rich person or inorganic compound will become a rich person. Now, this person is taking carbon, which means we call it as money. And this person is not taking carbon. Inorganic person is not taking carbon. That means inorganic person is not taking the money. This person is taking money from everyone strictly. And also you see, organic becomes what? He becomes the rich person. So because he becomes a rich person, now you may have heard, if a rich person, now say, imagine there is a person, this person is doing a business and he become rich. Will he keep on doing the same business? No, he will start up a side business like that. Organic compound started up a side business. We call it as biomolecule. Imagine, okay, biomolecule. Now, what do you mean by bio? What does the word bio stands for? Bio means living things. Now, imagine, now this biomolecules means what? What do you mean by biomolecule? Biomolecule means what? Who created this name biomolecule? Organic compound. So organic compound is present where? It is present in the living thing. So what is the definition for biomolecule? Biomolecule means organic compound present in living matter, that you call it as biomolecule. Did you understand? What do you mean by biomolecule? Organic compound is started up a business. That means in another term, organic compound can be called as what? Biomolecule. What is the definition for biomolecule? Organic compound present in living matter, that you call it as biomolecule. Now imagine, I told you that organic compound started up a new business. No. So if we started up a new business, what is the business name? The business name is what? Biomolecule. The business name is the biomolecule. Now, if I say, if the business name is biomolecule, always remember, a business will have a motto. They will have a motto. So if they have a motto, means think about KFC. What is the motto of the KFC? Finger licking good, right? So that is the motto. Like what? The definition of biomolecule, we are going to remember it as a motto of the biomolecule. How? Organic compound present where? Organic compound present where? Now the word bio stands for what? Living, no? Organic compound present in living matter. It is present in what? Living matter. So present in living matter. So organic compound present in living matter, we call it as biomolecule. Now as I told you, this is a business started from who? It is started by the organic compound. So you may think, what kind of a business? He started up a food business. What are the food he's selling? He's selling carbohydrate. What is he selling? He's selling carbohydrate. He's selling protein. He is selling lipids. And he also selling nucleic acid and finally vitamins. Finally, vitamins. Now, what do you need to understand? What do you need to understand? When you talk about biomolecule, biomolecule is created by who? Organic compounds. So in your exam, they can ask you, mention 5 organic compounds, or else in your exams, they can ask you, mention the biomolecules. So what are the biomolecules? Carbohydrate, protein, lipid, nucleic acid, and vitamins. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Now, I told you that inorganic compound is the brother of organic, right? So, this brother, inorganic, is a lazy person. He always likes to Copy his brother. Now what he will do? Because his brother started up a business, he also started up a side business without having money. So now because he had money, he started to sell carbohydrate, protein, lipid, and nucleic acid and vitamins. No. But inorganic compound, he don't have money much, but still he wanted to sell something because his brother is selling. He copies his brother. So he started selling water, which is cheap, and second one, gas, and then he started selling minerals. So finally, what is the overview of this part? We understood there is a part in this lesson called compound. What are the two types of compounds we have? Organic compound and inorganic compound. What do you mean by organic compound? Organic compounds are compounds which contain what? Carbon, except carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, carbonate, and bicarbonate. Inorganic compounds which do not contain carbon. So, under organic compound, we get a name. What is the under organic compound? Under organic compound, what do you get? You get a name called biomolecule. What do you mean by biomolecule? Organic compound present in living matter. We call that as biomolecule. So what are the biomolecules that is solved out by organic compound? Carbohydrate, protein, lipids, nucleic acid, and vitamin. Under that, inorganic compounds has three people: water, gas, and minerals. Got the idea? Understood? Understood? Got the idea? Yes or no? Yes or no? Got the idea? Right. So, clear with that? Understood? Right. Now listen. Now listen. Now what you need to understand here is, now almost we studied how an organism is made up of. So we said organism is made up of cell. That means how a cell is made up of. Cell is made up of atoms. And then we got an idea about molecules. And then we got idea about what is an element. And we got idea about compounds. And directly we studied about two types of compounds, of inorganic compound, organic compound. And then we got introduced to the new word called biomolecule, which is belongs to the organic. And we studied what are the organic compounds we have. There are 5. And then we studied what are the inorganic compounds. We have 3. 3 types are there. Now what are we going to study is, we will be studying about the organic compound in detail. The first person of organic compound is carbohydrate. So we will be studying carbohydrate in detail, which is very, very important for your term exam. In the term exam, most of the time, they will be testing the carbohydrate part. In this lesson, we have so many experiments, we have so many things and all. Okay, now already in grade 6, we have studied about carbohydrate. Now, let us see some examples for carbohydrate. Shall we see some examples, some pictures related to the carbohydrate? Now, we have already, we have an idea about carbohydrate, but let's see. Yes. Is it possible to share the screen? Okay, give us 1 minute. We'll show you some pictures related to the carbohydrate to understand. Okay, so while that we are doing that, I'll ask you some questions to rewind what you have learned all this time. Yes. I hope it's loading. Okay, now when you talk about carbohydrate, in another term, we call it as carbs. Anyone knows good examples for carbohydrate, what we do daily? What do we have daily in our life, day-to-day life? We take carbohydrate, we take rice, we take bread, we take what else? The things related which contains flour, cupcakes. We take banana, also contains carbohydrate. Potato also contains carbohydrate. Then oats also contain carbohydrate. So these things we know about carbohydrate when we was grade 6, right? Right. Now, when you talk about carbohydrate, can someone tell me carbohydrate? I'll ask you one question. Is it a molecule? Is carbohydrate is a molecule? Or is it an atom? Or is it a compound? Or is it an element? Any good answers I could see here? Carbohydrate is a molecule, or is it an atom, or is it a compound, or is it an element? What can you say about carbohydrate? Now, just now we studied. Under what did you find the carbohydrate? Very good, Rita. That's correct. So, carbohydrate is what? Carbohydrate is a compound. What compound is that? We study two types of compound. Is it an organic compound or is it an inorganic compound? We study two types of compound. What is the compound that carbohydrate belongs to? It is belongs to the organic compound. Very good. So now a compound is made up of what? There is a quiz, yes. Now when you talk about compound is made up of what? Compound is made up of what? We can say compound is made up of dissimilar molecules, or it can be made up of combination of several elements. So that means carbohydrate should be made up of what? It should be made up of elements. Now we know carbohydrate is a compound. That means a compound is made up of elements. No, that means this carbohydrate also should have elements. What are the elements that carbohydrate contains? 3 elements. What are those? Number 1, carbon. Number 2, hydrogen. Number 3, oxygen. So what are the elements does the carbohydrate contain? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Combination of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, they formed carbohydrate. So what are the elements does the carbohydrate contain? Carbohydrate contain 3 elements. What are those? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Got the idea? Understood? Right. Now listen to me carefully. Now listen. Now when you talk about carbohydrate, we know carbohydrate contains these elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, these 3 things. Now when you talk about carbohydrate, it can be divided into 3. Now in another term, now have you ever felt like this? Now say you take a piece of bread. If you take a piece of bread and if you start chewing the bread, have you felt sweet? Have you felt sweet? Now, when you take a bun, a piece of a plain bun, and when you start chewing a little amount of sweet taste, have you felt? Have you felt a little amount of sweet taste? If you want, you can try later. You may have felt sweet taste, a bit of sweet taste. If you take the normal plain rice, start chewing a bit and you will feel sweet. The reason, because carbohydrate is called as sugar. In another term, the carbohydrate, we call it as sugar. Now, the people who have diabetes, they say cut down rice. They say don't take white rice, take red rice. They say don't eat much bread. They say don't take so much of flour, cut down the carbohydrate. What is the reason? Because carbohydrate have sugar. That's what you gain weight. That's what you become, like what you say. You get the diabetes. The reason carbohydrate, in another term, we call it as sugar. Now listen. Now when you talk about carbohydrate, it can be divided according to the number of sugar. It can be divided according to what? Number of sugar. For example, I wanted to teach you some Latin numbers. Now in science is made up of what? Latin. It is like full of Latin words and everything only. You have Spanish, Latin words, everything mixed up only. You have this science. So first, number 1. If I say the word 1, you need to remember in science that comes as mono. Mono means 1. If I say di means 2. Then if I say 3, we say what? We say tri. Okay. 4, we say tetra. Okay. And then we say 5, we say penta. And then we say 6, We say hexa. We say hexa. Now, if you know until 6 for now enough, I will teach you the rest of them. Now, mono means 1, di means 2, tri means 3, tetra means 4, penta means 5, and hexa means 6. Now, if you have more than one, if you say in multiple, we say poly. Poly means what? We say several. Poly stands for several. Poly means in Latin, we say several. Now, listen. Now, when you talk about carbohydrate, I told you carbohydrate is made up of how many elements? 3 elements. What are those? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, when you talk about carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, in carbohydrate, you have 6 carbon. How many carbon? 6 carbon. How many hydrogen? 12 hydrogen. How many oxygen? 6 oxygen, which means C6H12O6. This number is very, very important. This number is very, very important. Since you have 6 carbon, we say what? How many? Hexa, no? We have 6 carbon. So we say hexa. So that means that word becomes as a hexose. Now hexose only getting divided into 3 as monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. That means the carbohydrate is getting divided into 3 according to the number of sugar that is present. That means according to the number of carbon and according to the number of sugar that is present, that's what it is getting divided into 3. One is monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. Now, when you talk about the hydrogen and oxygen, what can you say about the value? What is the ratio between the hydrogen and oxygen? What is the ratio? 12:6. That means what can you talk about the ratio? What is the simplest ratio of this? 2:1. So the ratio between hydrogen and oxygen in carbohydrate is 2:1. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? So when you talk about the ratio between the hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1. According to the number of carbon, you have 6 carbon. Because of that, we call it as hexose. This hexose only getting divided into 3 as monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. So when I say the word saccharide, saccharine, we say saccharide or saccharine. What do you mean by saccharide? Saccharide means what? We say it as sugar in Latin. So in Latin, we say saccharide means sugar. Disaccharide, Now, monosaccharide means 1 sugar. Disaccharide means 2 sugar. Polysaccharide means how many sugar? Several sugar. That means if I say 1 sugar, remember 1 sugar. What is the shape of a sugar? What is the shape of the sugar? Now, whenever we say monosaccharide, in another term, monosaccharide, we call it as simple sugar. What is another name for monosaccharide? We call it as what? Simple sugar. So if you take a simple sugar, how does a simple sugar would look like? We know that is crystal in shape, and also it is soluble in water. It is soluble in water, and it is sweet in taste. It is sweet in taste. But if I talk about disaccharide, how many monosaccharide has combined together to form one disaccharide? Now see, mono means 1. Di means 2. That means how many monosaccharide has to combine together to form one disaccharide? 2. That means 2 monosaccharide. Monosaccharide plus monosaccharide, you form what? 1 disaccharide. Now imagine this as a jaggery. Imagine this as a jaggery. Now if you talk about jaggery, you will find the jaggery will be slightly crystal. So what is the feature of disaccharide? They are slightly crystal. Will it be soluble easily? No, they are slightly soluble and they are sweet in taste. So what is the feature of monosaccharide? They are crystal in shape, soluble, sweet. But if you talk about the disaccharide, it is the double the amount of monosaccharide. That means that it will be very strong. That will be very strong. If you think about jaggery, now it will be slightly crystal, not completely crystal, slightly soluble. Also, it will be sweet. Now, polysaccharide means what? It will be more and more and more very strong. That means several monosaccharides, several people are getting combined. It will be more stronger. Now think, will it be crystal? Think about a sugar cane. Will it be crystal? Is the sugarcane is crystal? No. So we can write that polysaccharide, not crystal. They are not crystal. Think about, are they soluble in water easily? No. So not soluble. They are not soluble. Then think about, are they sweet? I mean, inside the sugarcane it is sweet. Outside the sugarcane is it sweet? No. So not sweet. So what is the feature? What are the features of monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide? What is the feature? So monosaccharide, what is the feature? They are crystal, soluble, and they are sweet. Disaccharide, slightly crystal, slightly soluble, and sweet. Then when you talk about polysaccharide, what can you say? They are not crystal, not soluble, and not sweet. So these are the features of what? Features of monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Yes? Understood? Is it, Azan? Okay, let's wait for 2 minutes and then we'll continue, okay? So if you wanted to write the important parts like the words called hexose, those words are not there now, so you all can write it down. Right. I have to accept it, Barira. After I will accept it. Okay. After the class, I will start accepting. That means I have to give approval. So if I give approval, you can open it. Okay. Once done, let me know. If the azan is over, you can just update me. Okay, so Azan is over. Let's continue. Right, now listen. So now what happened? Already we studied about atom, we studied about molecules, we studied about elements, we studied about compounds. So we got an idea about it. And also we studied about the organic compound, inorganic compound. Now we are studying in detail about the carbohydrate which comes under organic compound. So after a while, we studied that the organic compound called carbohydrate it is a compound and it is made up of elements. How many elements are there? 3 elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. And we know that this carbohydrate has 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen. Because it has 6 carbon, we call that as hexose, because in Latin we say for 6 as hexa. So combination of 6 carbon, we call it as hexose. That hexose is divided by 3: monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. And when we talk about the hydrogen and oxygen, the ratio between the hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1. And also when you talk about monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide, monosaccharide is simple, sugar crystal, soluble, and sweet. Disaccharide is combination of 2 monosaccharide, which means it is slightly soluble, slightly crystal, and sweet. And when you talk about polysaccharide, combination of several monosaccharide, you form polysaccharide. So polysaccharide is not crystal, not sweet, and not soluble also. Right. Now let's talk about monosaccharide in detail. Let's talk about monosaccharide in detail. Right. Now listen to me. Now when you talk about monosaccharide, now I told you that carbohydrate is there. This carbohydrate is made up of what? It is made up of, now when you talk about carbohydrate is made up of mainly by monosaccharide. So combination of several monosaccharide, they formed what? They formed carbohydrate. That means what is the structural unit? We can, in exam, they can ask you a structural unit. In exam, most of the time I saw in your term paper or unit test paper, they can ask you, what is the structural unit of carbohydrate? Or they can ask in another term, what is the monomer? Monomer means what? What is the simplest form of this substance? So carbohydrate can be called as a monomer, the structural unit. So they can ask you, what is the monomer of carbohydrate? We can say monosaccharide. What is the structural unit of carbohydrate? Monosaccharide. Right. Now, when you talk about monosaccharide also can be divided into three. Accordingly, number one, we call it as glucose. Number one, we call it as what? Glucose. Number two, we call it as fructose. We call it as what? Fructose. Number three, we call it as galactose. We call it as what? Galactose. Number one, glucose. Number two, fructose. Number three, galactose. So under monosaccharide, how many sugar do you have? Number one, glucose, fructose, and galactose. Now, as I told you that carbohydrate is made up of C6, H12, and O6. That means monosaccharide also will have the same number. 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen. So this is the number. That means this glucose also will have the same chemical formula. C6, H12, O6. This person also will have C6, H12 and O6. Here also you will have C6, H12 and O6. Now why do we have the same number but the names are very different? The main reason is, now say if the glucose is having this kind of a structure, if they have this kind of a structure, fructose will have a different structure. According to the structure, only the names are differing. Do you understand? They have the similar number of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but the names are different. The reason because their structure is different. As their structure is different, only these names are differing from each other. Clear with that? Understood that? I know most of the teachers will not tell you this, but because the structure is different, only you have the name called glucose, fructose, and galactose. But the number of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen will be same throughout the part. Clear? Right. Now let's talk about glucose in detail. Right? Now let's talk about glucose. Now when you talk about glucose, what you need to understand is, okay, now when you talk about glucose, have you heard about glucose in your school before? Now whenever you go to sports meet and all of them, have you heard about glucose in your school before? Like, have you studied about the glucose and have you got an idea about glucose? Like, let's say, for example, now when you talk about glucose, we say glucose is given to get energy and you get energy because of glucose and all the stuff. No? So when you talk about glucose, what do you need to understand? What is the main thing you have to understand about glucose? Now, when you talk about glucose, mainly glucose can be produced. We need to understand glucose can be produced as well as glucose can be used. Let's see where we can produce glucose and where we can use glucose. Right. Now listen. Now when you talk about glucose, where do we produce glucose? Imagine and tell me. Now imagine we have studied in grade 6. Where do we produce glucose? We produce glucose during photosynthesis. So do you know what is photosynthesis? What does the word photosynthesis? What is the word photo stands for? Always remember, photo stands for light. Synthesis means what? We say production. So light production is photosynthesis. That means you are producing something using the light. That we call it as what? Photosynthesis. Right. Now let's say, for example, you have the tree, you have the plant, or you have the tree. Now what is the color of this plant? What is the color of this plant? We know it is green color. Why is it green color? Because of the chlorophyll. Because the chlorophyll is present, it is in green color. Now imagine why is it in green color? Because of chlorophyll. No, where did you form the chlorophyll? The chlorophyll was formed by chloroplast. It was formed by what? Chloroplast. Now listen to me very carefully. This chloroplast can only take two types of light. What are the two types of light they can take? They can take the red light and the blue light. So during the photosynthesis, red light, that means we say sunlight has 7 colors of light. Out of these 7 colors, red light and the blue light is absorbed by the chlorophyll in order to do the photosynthesis, which means we know photosynthesis is the production of food. What is the food that is produced by the plant? That is glucose. Clear with that? So when do we produce glucose? We produce glucose during photosynthesis. When do we use glucose? Now say, this is you. This is you. You are eating food. Now, why are you eating food? To survive on the earth? No, because you wanted to survive on the earth, you are eating food. Now, food can give you what? It can give you what? Energy. So, energy means what? Now, I told you glucose can give you energy. That means the food inside your body is being stored as a glucose. It is stored as a glucose. Now, what is happening? You are breathing oxygen. When you breathe oxygen, what is happening? When you breathe oxygen, the oxygen is getting inside your body. The glucose which is already stored will be broken. Once the glucose is broken during respiration, energy will be formed. So that means, when do you use glucose? You use glucose during respiration. So you need to understand, glucose can be produced during photosynthesis. It can be used during respiration. Clear with that? I know this is not mentioned much in detail about in your book, but this has to be known by you. Clear with that? Understood? Got the idea about the photosynthesis and respiration? So glucose is helping you to produce what? Glucose will be produced during photosynthesis, as well as it will be used during the respiration. Right. Now listen to me carefully. Now what do you need to understand? Next person is about the fructose. Fructose is going to be the sweetest sugar. For example, honey, ripened banana, like that. So the sweetest sugar under the monosaccharide is fructose. Galactose has no sweet taste. They don't have any sweet taste. So galactose has no sweet taste. So galactose has no sweet taste. Yes, fructose is found in fruits, most probably. So right. Now when you talk about galactose, galactose has no sweet taste. Most of the time it is found in the dairy products. It is mostly found in the dairy products. Clear with that? Understood that? So what did we learn? Under carbohydrate, we studied one of the hexose, that is going to be the monosaccharide. Monosaccharide is a simple sugar which is crystal, which is sweet in taste, and it is also soluble in water. Under the monosaccharide, you have 3 types of sugar: glucose, fructose, and galactose. Glucose is the structural unit of monosaccharide, and also it is produced during photosynthesis, used during respiration. Fructose, it is the sweetest sugar under the monosaccharide, and also what you need to understand, galactose has no sweet taste, and most probably it is found in the dairy products. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Yes. Right. Right. Now let's move to the disaccharide. Now when you talk about disaccharide, now whenever we say the word di, what do you mean by di? Di, I told you in Latin we said two. Saccharide means what? Sugar. So that means in order to form disaccharide, how many monosaccharide has to combine? 2 monosaccharide has to combine. Hydrolysis, I'll explain you what is hydrolysis, okay? So monosaccharide plus monosaccharide. So if 2 monosaccharide is combining together, you are forming 1 disaccharide. Did you understand? So that means this is a reverse process. This is a reverse process. That means whenever there is a chemical reaction, remember, whenever there is a chemical reaction is taking place, they will produce water. That means when monosaccharide and monosaccharide combining together, this is a chemical reaction. When this chemical reaction is forming, in order to produce the disaccharide, water also will be formed along with the disaccharide. Did you understand? So combination of 2 monosaccharide, you form disaccharide. If you want to break down the disaccharide into monosaccharide back, that you call it as hydrolysis. So hydrolysis means what? You use water to break a compound in order to form the initial stage. That you call it as hydrolysis. That means I am using the water and I am breaking this compound disaccharide in order to form monosaccharide. That you call it as hydrolysis, which means the reverse process. That you call it as hydrolysis. Clear with that, Rida? So now what is the chemical formula of monosaccharide? What is the chemical formula? C6H12O6 plus C6H12 and O6. That means 2 times the monosaccharide getting added to form disaccharide. Now let's add this carbon. Now we know disaccharide. How many carbons are there? 12 carbon. How many hydrogen is there? 24. And how many oxygen is going to be there? Again, it's going to be 12. Now, guys, I told you, whenever there is a chemical reaction is taken place, they will produce what? Water. Now, out of this reaction only, you have to subtract the water. Out of this reaction only, you have to subtract the water. How many oxygen should I subtract out of this 12? 1 oxygen. How many hydrogen should I subtract from this 24? 2. So which means what is my final chemical formula for the disaccharide? C12 H22 O11. So plus finally the water is being produced. So this is the chemical formula for the disaccharide. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Got the idea? Yes? Understood about the disaccharide? Better you can write this calculation with you. Yes? Better you can write the calculation. So this you have to understand, this is a reversible reaction. This is a reversible reaction. So glucose and glucose can combine together to form disaccharide. Water and disaccharide can combine together in order to break into the initial stage as monosaccharide and monosaccharide. Right. I hope you got the idea about disaccharide. Now listen. Now initially, let's compare with the monosaccharide and disaccharide and let's move on. Now say, when you talk about monosaccharide, what did you have? Under monosaccharide, what are the 3 types of sugar we had? Number 1, we had glucose. Number 2, we had fructose. Number 3, we had the galactose. Right. Now listen. Now we have disaccharide. Now to form disaccharide, how many monosaccharide did combine? 2 monosaccharide has to get combined in order to form 1 disaccharide. That means to form the types of disaccharide, these people have to combine together. That means these people have to combine together within in order to form the types of disaccharide, which means, listen, glucose plus glucose combine together to form maltose, or we can call it as maltose. Glucose plus fructose combine together to form sucrose. Galactose plus glucose in order to form lactose. That means, see, how many monosaccharide combine together to form 1 disaccharide? 2. How many monosaccharide here? Again, here 2 and 1. Here 2 and then here 1. Did you understand? Now, whenever there is a chemical reaction, they will always produce water. They will always produce water. And we know whenever there is a production of water, this becomes a hydrolysis. This becomes a reverse reaction. Because glucose is the structural unit of carbohydrate. That means the main person. Now I told you, you need a cell to form an organism. Like what? Without glucose, there is no carbohydrate. That's what we say. A person who eats so much of carbohydrate, we check the diabetic patient glucose level. No? We don't check the sucrose level, we don't check the fructose level, we don't check the galactose level. We always check the glucose level. Why? Glucose is the main person to form diabetes. So glucose is the structural unit of carbohydrate. That's what the glucose is getting combined with everyone. Did you understand? Glucose is the main person to form everyone. Clear? Like what? We need a cell to form an organism. Got the idea? Understood? So like what? Sucrose is going to be the sweetest. Sucrose is going to be the sweetest sugar under the disaccharide. Fructose is going to be the sweetest sugar under the monosaccharide. Clear with that? Understood? Got the idea? Yes? Understood? Clear with that? Okay. Now let's go to the polysaccharide. Let's move to the polysaccharide. Right. Now listen. Now what you need to understand is, I forgot to tell, galactose has no sweet taste, no? Galactose has no sweet taste. Lactose also has no sweet taste. It also has no sweet taste. Most probably, it is found in the dairy products like breast milk. It is found in the breast milk, as well as it is found in the cow's milk. So cow's milk, like lactose item, we say lactose. Lactose means what? We say anchor milk has too much of lactation. We say lactation, lactose. What does that mean? Lactose and lactation means it's all about the dairy products that is related to the carbohydrate. Clear? Right. Now let's go to the polysaccharide. Now we have to combine everyone and we have to talk about polysaccharide. But before that, listen to me. Now when you talk about polysaccharide, now when you talk about polysaccharide, what do you mean by poly? Poly, we say several. Saccharide, we say sugar. So poly means several. Saccharide means we say sugar. Now listen to me. Several sugar. That means one carbohydrate or two. Now see, imagine one monosaccharide or two monosaccharide. No, we need several monosaccharides to combine together to form one polysaccharide. That means instead I call this as monosaccharide, several monosaccharide. Instead of monosaccharide, I can call it as what? I can call as glucose. Instead of several monosaccharide, I can say several glucose combined together, they form polysaccharide. So under polysaccharide, you will be having three people. Like what? You had under monosaccharide and disaccharide. Now what happens? Under monosaccharide, how many people are there? Listen. Under monosaccharide, you had glucose, you had fructose, and you had galactose. You had this. Under disaccharide, maltose, you had sucrose, and you had what? You have lactose. You had the lactose, right? Now what happened? Under polysaccharide, what will happen? Glucose and maltose combine together. Glucose and maltose. That means one monosaccharide and one disaccharide combined together, you are forming polysaccharide. That means glucose plus, I will write as G, and one maltose, you are forming what? You are forming starch. You are forming starch. Combination of glucose and combination of maltose. We already know maltose is made up of how many glucose? 2 glucose. Glucose plus glucose, you form maltose. So that means glucose plus maltose, you are forming starch. Here, glucose plus fructose, you are forming cellulose. You are forming what? Cellulose. Glucose plus lactose, you are forming glycogen. You are forming what? Glycogen. So let me explain you about starch in detail. Now, did you understand the formation first of all? I guess you should know how these people are formed. Did you get an idea? Yes? Did you get an idea how these people are formed? So you need to understand that starch is made up of glucose and maltose. Cellulose is made up of glucose and fructose. Glycogen is made up of glucose and lactose. So this is how it is made up of. It's not in your book, but you should understand. This is the formation. But finally, we understood that glucose is going to be the main person for everyone, which means what is the structural unit of carbohydrate? That's going to be glucose. Glucose is the structural unit. That means if you have glucose, you will have carbohydrate. If there is no glucose, there will be no carbohydrate. Yes, Seema. Right. Now let's talk about starch. Now let me explain you about starch in detail, and now listen. Now what is happening, Now what is happening? Now what is happening is, now I told you glucose is produced during when? When is the glucose is produced? We know glucose is produced during photosynthesis. Now what is happening is, during photosynthesis, what is happening now? Say you have the plant. So once the photosynthesis had been taken place, you are forming glucose. No, this glucose will be stored. This glucose will be what? It will be stored inside the leaf as a food. Now, when the glucose is being stored as a food, this glucose will turn into a substance called starch. It will be turned into a substance called what? Starch. In exam, if they ask you a question, what is the form of now they can ask you, what is the form that the plants store the food? How do they store the food? In what form do they store the food? How does a plant store the food? In what form? They store the food in the form of starch. If they ask you an exam, how do they produce the food? They produce the food in the form of glucose. Did you understand the difference? They produce the food in the form of glucose. They store the food in the form of starch, which means starch is gonna be the storage compound. It is going to be what? It is going to be the storage compound of the plant. So who is acting as a storage compound as in the plant? Starch. So starch is acting as a storage compound in the plant. Understood? Second one, I spoke about cellulose. So cellulose means what? Now we know our body is made up of what? Our body is made up of cell. Now if I take the cell, the outer part of the cell, we call it as cell membrane. We call it as what? Cell membrane. Our cell membrane is made up of what? Our cell membrane is made up of what? Our cell membrane, the cell membrane inside our body is made up of what? It is made up of protein. It is made up of protein. Like what? Now this cellulose is there. No? This cellulose is always present in plants. So if you take the plant cell, the outer part of the plant cell, we call it as cell wall. We call it as what? Cell wall. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. That means cellulose is acting as a what? It is acting as a structural compound. Structure. It's giving a structure. Now cell wall is a structure. No. It is acting as a structural compound. Did you understand? Did you understand? Now, what is the function of cellulose? Now, if I eat banana, banana contains too much fibers. No, banana contains too much of fibers. Now, when you have the food that contains fibers, you will prevent constipation. Prevent constipation means what? Opposite part of loose motion. When you can't go to washroom for a long period of time, we call it as constipation. So, if you eat the food that contains cellulose, you will prevent constipation. Clear with that? Understood that? Now let's go to the third person, that is glycogen. Now I told you that glucose is being stored inside the plant in the form of starch. I told you I am eating food. I am eating rice. I am eating cake. Now when I eat this food has to get stored inside my body. No. So can it get stored as a cake inside my body? No. It will absorb all the glucose in this body. So in the food, it will absorb all the glucose inside the food. It will convert the glucose into glycogen. So glycogen is the storage compound inside the animal. So plant store the glucose in the form of starch inside their body. Animals store the glucose in the form of glycogen inside their body. So the the storage compound of plant is starch. The storage compound of animal is glycogen. Structural compound of plant is cellulose. Clear? Understood? Got the idea? Yes? Understood? Clear with that? I hope everything is clear about the carbohydrate. Yes? Got the idea now? Right. Now listen. Now finally, we are done with the carbohydrate part. I mean, like we are done with the monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. Now listen to me very carefully. Now what is happening here? Now when you talk about monosaccharide, combination of two monosaccharide, you form disaccharide. Combination of monosaccharide and disaccharide, you are forming polysaccharide. So monosaccharide had three people: glucose, fructose, and we had galactose. Nucleic acid nucleic acid is present inside your body. You cannot see through your naked eyes. It's like kind of a stand like this. It's look like this. This is how the nucleic acid will look like. DNA. I'll tell you that about it later. Okay, glucose, fructose, and galactose. Now what happened? Combination of glucose and glucose, you form malt. Combination of glucose and maltose, you form starch. And combination of glucose and fructose, you form sucrose. Combination of fructose and sucrose, you form cellulose. And always remember, whenever there's a chemical reaction, there is a formation of water. There is a formation of water. So all of these are reverse reaction. This reverse reaction only we call it as hydrolysis. Clear with that? Hydrolysis means what? If you have water, if you put water to the starch, starch will be broken into maltose. If you put water to the maltose, maltose will be broken into 2 glucose. Like, clear? Understood? Got the idea? Now let's talk about the significance of carbohydrate. Significance means what? Importance of carbohydrate. Now let's talk about the importance of carbohydrate. Very simple. Very simple. And you are going to answer that. So let's talk about the importance of carbohydrate. Right. Now listen. So when you talk about the importance of carbohydrate, now listen to me. Now what is the first important? Now I said you that. Now say for example, you have a sun. There's a sun. This is the sun. Okay. Now this sun is producing light. No, the sun is producing light. Now if you talk about glucose, glucose is producing what? It is producing you energy. Now what is the difference is? Now when you talk about sun is producing something. Now whenever you have an object, if that object is producing something, we call them as source. We call them as source. So sun is a source of light. Like what? Now carbohydrate is mainly made up of glucose. No, so we know glucose is made up of what? Sorry, carbohydrate is made up of glucose. Glucose is producing energy, which means what is the first significance of carbohydrate? It is an energy source. It is an energy source. That's the first significance. Second one. Now I told you that glucose can be stored as a glycogen. Also, it can be stored as a starch. That means storing. So acting as what? It is acting as a storage compound. It is acting as a storage compound. Third one. I told you that this glucose can be present surrounding the cells of plant as a cellulose. Now, cellulose is acting as a what? It is acting as a structural compound or component. We can write component, structural component. So these are the 3 important significance of carbohydrate. Now we have to study about the experiment related to the carbohydrate. The reason that I'm always go very patiently regarding this lesson, you know, this is biology. You don't want to by heart. You need to understand. Always biology should be understood. Now think, now how do we become doctors? Do we always by heart? No, we understand. So when you understand things in a way that you need to understand, you will never need to by heart. Now see, you go to doctor, he is taking some medicines and writing those medicines and giving to you. The reason why is he opening his textbook and looking at the textbook and giving you medicines? No, they think and they give. That means they know, they understand in a way they give. So that's how I want you to understand the lesson. So the lesson is being understood in a way that you need to understand. That means you need no need to by heart anything. By hearting is waste. That means you're forcing your brain to study. You're forcing something. If you force someone, if I'm forcing you to do something, will you do it? No. Your brain will never force your brain to study. But if you tell your brain in a way to understand, you can. Okay. Constituent of nucleic acid means, Rida, they are being a part of nucleic acid, carbohydrate. But that is not needed for right now. I'll tell you that I have to correct it. I will correct it and I'll tell you. Okay, right. Now let's talk about the experiments related to the carbohydrate. There are three experiments. There are three experiments you have to study. So let me explain you about the experiments. So listen to me. Now, when you talk about carbohydrate, what is the name that I gave for the carbohydrate initially? I told carbohydrate, we call it as sugar. We call the carbohydrate as what? We call the carbohydrate as a sugar. Now, when you talk about, we will have the quiz by 8:15. Okay, we will have the quiz by 8:15. Okay. You all have to stay in the session in order to get it. The person to get the first will get a student planner as a gift. So once you have done with the quiz session, now if you're already a person who have got the student planner, you won't get the student planner, you will get something else. If you're a person who has not got the student planner of Knowledge Planet Academy, you will definitely get that, and we will contact you. Okay, right. So now what is happening is, now let's talk about carbohydrate. So now when you talk about carbohydrate, we call carbohydrate as what? Sugar. So what are the two types of sugar we know under carbohydrate? One, we call them as reducing sugar. Other one, we call it as non-reducing sugar. So what are the two types of sugar that comes under carbohydrate? Reducing sugar and non-reducing sugar. Now let me explain you in detail. Now see, have you heard about diabetes? Now already we all of us are very common to this word diabetes. Now when you talk about diabetes, what does the diabetes say? We say sugar inside your body has increased. So that is what we call it as diabetes. So do you know how do we check diabetic patients whether they got diabetes or not? We do a test called Benedict test. We call it as what? Benedict test. So what is the test that we use to test whether this person got sugar or not? I mean glucose level is high or not? We do the test called what? Benedict test. If the Benedict test is answering, say if you got the result, it's not a blood test, it's a urine test. Okay, it's a urine test. Blood test is different. Blood test is directly we take the blood and we count it. No, but this is something in detail we do. We take the urine. Now sometimes blood will not show, but the urine can show. So because of that, we do the urine test. So that is the test that we do using the urine is Benedict test. If the Benedict test is answering, if the Benedict test is showing you positive result, that sugar we call it as reducing sugar. If the Benedict test is not answering, if it is not answering, and if that doesn't give you a positive result, negative result, that we call it as non-reducing sugar. That means answering means what? Now say for example, I'll tell you what is answering. Now listen. Now what is happening? Now when you take the urine, now say for example, there is a person who have come to do the urine test to check whether he got the diabetes. Now what is he doing is, he is giving a sample of urine, and this urine is being tested under the Benedict test. Now say I have taken this guy's urine, and what I'm doing is I'm keeping it under the flame. I'm keeping it under the flame. That means I am going to heat it. So while I'm heating it, I am going to add a solution called Benedict solution. Benedict solution. So this Benedict solution is blue in color. This Benedict solution is what color? Blue in color. Now, if this person has glucose, if that person contains glucose, now imagine this guy is already having glucose. That means this person has come to check the urine whether he got diabetes. So that means this person is having glucose. Now, what is happening? Now, I remember the rainbow color. Your. That means if the guy is containing glucose, if the blue color solution is turning into green color, if the green is turning into yellow, if it is turning into orange to brick red precipitate, that means this person is having glucose, which means this person is positive in having diabetes. Clear with that? So that positive result, only we call it as reducing sugar. Did you understand? If that person, if that solution is giving positive result, I mean, if it answers to the test, that is a reducing sugar. Say this person doesn't have diabetes. He doesn't have diabetes. Will it change into the brick red precipitate color? Will the solution turn into red color? Will it turn into red color? No, it will not turn into red color. No, it is bad if they get the answer. If it answered, that means this person having diabetes. If that doesn't answer, this person doesn't have diabetes. Did you understand? If it comes to the brick red precipitate color, this guy is having diabetes. If doesn't change into red color, that means this person doesn't have diabetes. So if they have diabetes, that means they have the reducing sugar. If they don't have diabetes, means they don't have, they do have non-reducing sugar. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? I'll tell you in detail. Clear? Okay, now let's come to the experiment that has come to your exam. Now listen, what are the reducing sugar that we have in our lesson is, we have, listen, we have glucose is a reducing sugar. That means it will answer the test or not, it will answer the test. Then we have fructose. We have fructose. Fructose will answer the test. Then we have galactose. Galactose also will answer the test. Then we have maltose. Maltose also will answer the test. And we have lactose. Lactose also will answer the test. So whatever the things here will show brick red precipitate. That means that will answer the test. These people, who is missing here? Sucrose. Sucrose will never answer the test. That means it will never get changed. It will never show the color change. But these people can show the color change. So that is what we call it as the Benedict test. So shall we do the Benedict test right now? So now usually I am out of Colombo today. So I am out of Colombo now. I'm today at Matale. So probably in my online classes, I usually do experiments and all live experiments. It can be in my physical classes. It can be in my online classes. I usually do. Usually I do experiments in the class. Since I am out of Colombo today, I won't be able to do any experiments. But in my future classes, I have done so many experiments to my students. I have shown the live heart, brains, and all of them. I have done so many things to my students. So same like that here also. Here also I would like to do, but unfortunately I didn't get any much resources to do it, but we'll do it in our future classes and all. Polysaccharides, yeah, added, I will tell you. So now what is happening is, to do this experiment, we need to imagine and we need to understand. So like cellulose, glycogen, starch also will be added under non-reducing sugar. So they can ask you an exam, mention some reducing sugar. So you can write glucose, fructose, galactose, maltose, and lactose. Non-reducing sugar, what are they? Sucrose, starch. You can write what? You can write cellulose also, but most probably the main person is sucrose, right? Now let's do the reducing sugar test. So for reducing sugar test, what are we going to do? I am going to take glucose solution. I am going to take what? Glucose solution. Did you go through the mind map, guys? I gave you the mind map in order to go through it, because instead you go through your textbook, which is very, very big to see and so many notes are there. But mind map is given for you to revise before your exam. Say you have a monthly test tomorrow, so you can revise that before your exam. All the important points are added. So that's the mind map I have given to you. Short notes are more detailed than the mind map, right? So what are you going to do? You are going to take glucose. and you are going to add Benedict solution. You are going to add Benedict solution. So this Benedict solution is what color? It is blue color. Benedict solution is blue color. And what you will do? You will heat the solution. Whenever you are adding the Benedict solution, remember, you need to heat the solution. So once you heat after some time, if the color is changing from rainbow with zero, that means from blue color to green color to yellow to orange to red. If it comes to red color, that means this glucose is considered as reducing sugar. Why? Because it is answering the test. Clear with that? Understood that? Now let's do the sucrose test and see. That we call it as non-reducing sugar test. Non-reducing sugar test. Now see, for example, now what are we going to do is, we are going to take sucrose. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the sucrose. Sucrose is inside this. I'm going to heat the solution, adding the Benedict solution. Now even though I did the heating and Benedict solution and all of them, because it is a non-reducing sugar, will it change the color? It will not change the color. But somehow, someone is telling you to prove whether sucrose can turn into a brick red precipitate. Yes. Now, when you talk about sucrose, can someone tell me sucrose is made up of what? What is the bonding of sucrose? Sucrose is made up of glucose plus. It is made up of glucose plus fructose. Now, combination of glucose and fructose, no, you form sucrose. That piece, sucrose is non-reducing sugar. But if I take the glucose and fructose separately, glucose and fructose coming under reducing sugar. No? What if I break the bond of glucose and fructose? They will become separate. No? If they become separate, they become reducing sugar. And if I do the test, will they change the color? Yes. So that means what I have to do, if I want to break the bond of any solution, I have to use acid. I have to use acid. Now, what is the acid that I'm going to use? I'm going to use dilute sulfuric acid, which means H2SO4, dilute less concentrated acid to the sucrose. Sucrose will break the bond. Now, glucose will be separated, fructose will be separated. When the glucose and fructose separated, again, if I add the Benedict solution and if I heat it, will it change the color? Yes, it will change the color because the bond is normal. Clear with that? Understood that? Got the idea? Clear? Right. Finally, you have to study about the starch test. You have to hydrolysis. Yes, that is also, you call it as hydrolysis. But mostly if you contain water, if water is helping to break a bond, that is, we call it as hydrolysis. If you're using acid, we don't most probably say. Hydro means water, right? That's what, right? Now, what I want to tell you is about the starch test. So what is the starch test you need to speak about? What is the starch test? Now, say, for example, tell me a food that contains starch. We can take cupcake. We can take what? We can take bread. We can take rice. We can take corn flour. But most probably, the most best example is slice of potato. I'm going to take slice of potato. So slice of potato. So you got a slice of potato. Now what are you going to do? So you got a slice of potato. Now what is going to happen is, now I'm going to test whether the potato contains starch. I'm going to test whether potato contains starch. So what are you going to do? I'm going to use a solution called what? Iodine solution. I'm going to use what? Iodine solution. So what is the color of this iodine solution? It is yellowish brown. It can be yellowish brown. It is yellowish brown. Okay. So yellowish brown. Now, when you talk about yellowish brown, iodine solution is added to the potato. Now, after some time, if the potato slice turn into purplish blue color, if it turns into purplish blue color, then I say this potato contains starch. The experiment is successful. If that doesn't turn into purplish blue color, does it contain starch? No. That means it doesn't contain starch. Did you understand? Clear with that? Got the idea? So this is how you learn science. You don't learn science by reading. You don't learn science by just doing things like, like always remember, in my class, we always go with experiment, live videos and everything. And since I'm out of Colombo, I couldn't do anything. So that is the main reason. And this is what we need to understand. Clear? So I hope what we studied and what we did all was clear through thick and thin. Everything was clear, and I hope you understood well. Don't leave the session. Stay in the session so I can share you the link to do the quiz. That means it is related to the this lesson only, right? If you really like the session, you can just send me a feedback regarding the session, so I could even share with others also to this number. And thank you so much for staying until the end. Give me 5 minutes. I'll share you the link to the quiz. So only the first winner will be receiving the student planner. So yes, stay tuned. Stay in the meeting so I can send you the link. And if you're really interested in the classes and all, you all can contact me this number. The co-host will be sharing the link, okay? Yeah, I will be sending into the chat only. Just wait, it's loading. The connection problem. I'm facing connection problem. Okay, Kram, you can share in YouTube as well.
This is the quiz link. You all can join. I hope everyone received it. And we'll be starting it by yeah, correctly we'll see there are 18, there should be 16 people. So let's see whether how many are joining, and within 5 minutes we'll be starting. Okay. And follow the Knowledge Planet Academy channel so you all can get more notes and free short notes and all of them. And I'll be creating a new community where I can provide you all the short notes related to all the subjects. So you all can stay tuned and you all can join the channel for more details. Shima, can you retry again? I will resend it back to you and just double check, okay? Retry. Okay, there are 16 people over here. I hope we can start right now. Are you all ready? Okay, we'll wait a minute. Exactly by 8:25 we'll be starting. Okay? Because the YouTube people also has to get joined. Yeah, we'll see. By the way, we will be showing you a small part, and yeah, we'll be starting in a minute. Okay, right, let's get started. We can keep moving forward. Yes, we will continue this, Begum. We will be continuing this lesson. So, however, we'll be continuing in my theory classes. We got two badges and all. So, in that, we'll be continuing. So, if you want more details, you can just contact my number so I can update you regarding that. You're welcome. I hope the mind maps will be very useful to you all. So, you all can go through that, okay? Right. Okay, so let's see the winner and let's finalize it. Aisha Isan. Congratulations, Aisha Isan. So you'll be getting the student planner of Knowledge Planet Academy. So please send your name, address, and phone number. By Monday, I will be couriering it to you. So you will be receiving it. Okay. So rest of them, good try, and we'll be trying our best from our upcoming classes. Also, we have a lot of things to be done, and all our new students will be receiving the student planners. It can be online or physical. So we give bundle of mind maps and all of them. So always we always give the best student planner, as well as this is how a gift, like let me show you. So this is what we give to our best student. So every month we'll be selecting a best student, and we will be giving this whole set of gift hamper to our students. So every student, it can be in science or it can be Islam or it can be health student, we'll be selecting, and we will be giving this to each and every student, to the best student. And also every new student will be receiving a student planner. So this is what we give the best to our students to motivate in learning. So if you are really interested, you can contact my number and you can talk to me if there's any doubt or anything. You can contact anytime, any time or any day. It doesn't matter. So drop me a text and see you. And thank you so much for your support and love and everything. And I hope the tunes were useful to you all. And good night, guys. Thank you so much and have a good day. I mean, new joiners. Yeah, we will continue the theory classes. In our theory classes, all the lessons will be continued.